Why do we need an airport? With climate change affecting all parts of the world, hurricanes are predicted to be more frequent and more intense. As a principal gateway to our island, the airport must be able to withstand hurricanes. The Bermuda economy, of course, suffers, as we all know, when the airport is offline. This is a video clip taken by a customs officer after Hurricane Faye, which you may recall was just a minimal hurricane. It's the arrivals lounge. There you go. Now, of course, we all remember Hurricane Fabian. And these are some shots of the airport and the environs after Hurricane Fabian. Our air terminal was almost totally destroyed. Certainly was destroyed inside. And the building didn't cave in, where the roof almost did. Now, this is an aerial view of the whole area here. You'll see the current terminal is down here in white. This area here is where the new terminal is planned to be. And of course, this is where the U.S. Naval and Air Force people had their facilities over there, which have been knocked down now. And this is the place we call the Finger, which we're going to talk about a little later on. But as you can see from this slide, as you can see from this slide, our terminal is in the absolute worst place insofar as exposure to severe weather. Hurricanes always come out of the southeast. They come into Castle Harbor, and they drive water up into this area. The causeway here prevents the water from escaping, and therefore it floods the airport. So flooding will always be a problem no matter what. So long as we have that terminal there, the flooding will always be a problem with this location. So it is a poor location, but of course, back in the old days, it was the only location that we had available. So that's why we're there. Things are different now. This is a cross-section to give you some idea of what happens during a hurricane of the likes of Fabian. This thing here is where the existing terminal is, and this, of course, is Castle Harbor. Well, you see, we have the storm surge that comes up over that berm there, and then there are waves on top of the storm surge, and that's why the facility was flooded. It's because it is so close to Castle Harbor. A new solution is to move the air terminal further away from Castle Harbor and to make it elevated. So you'll see here, this platform basically is going to be a platform which will be 5.2 meters above sea level. That platform will be a platform upon which the new terminal will be built. And as you can see, it is 317 meters away from the shore instead of 35. That's a long way. So when you put the same storm surge and the same wave height on it, you see that that particular facility all the way over there has a lot of protection from storms just by virtue of a new location and an elevated position. So no matter what you do to the present facility, it's going to have a problem here for storms because it's too close to the edge. So, beneath the paint, the building is crumbling. The new terminal is well past its life. The former government spent quite a bit of money, over $3 million, in a study that came to this conclusion that the terminal's life ended in 2008, so we're on extra time now. When it rains outside, it rains inside, as I think everybody knows. The sewage system in the airport is below sea level. It's tidal. When the tide is high and the wind is in the east, the toilets at our airport do not flush. And the area where you go in the international area, you go through either you're taking Air Canada or British Airways, that lounge there. The carpeting and flooring of that lounge have been replaced several times because the sewage comes up underneath there. And there have been times, I think last year, Aaron Adderley told me, that they had to evacuate that room for several days because they could not get out the smell. You know, we're all Bermudians. We're proud of Bermuda. We should be ashamed of this. So I've talked about the sewage. The building was built in phases. It is not built on footings. It's just on the ground. So the parts of the airport that were built long ago are settling at a different rate than the newer parts. So the whole facility is kind of twisting itself apart because it's not built on pylons or footings. The termites, I think a lot of people know the termites in the building. So that's kind of what we have. And then we have a few pretty pictures, I think. And there's much more to be seen. Actually, I want to tell you that we are making a video, sort of walk-through video of the facility now with some of the senior officers down there to show Bermudians the real condition of this building. I think if you're like me, you go to the airport, you know, with the minimum amount of lead time to get your flight. So you're there, you check in, you don't wait very long. If you're lucky, you don't wait very long, you get on the plane. You don't spend much time looking around. But if you did, you would see some not very nice things. So the question is, why don't we just repair this place? The heck with the new airport. Why don't we just fix it? Well, the principal reason is the cost. It's been estimated by the firm HNTB, it's an American consulting firm, technical consulting firm, that it will cost $115 to $117 million to bring this terminal up to speed. And when I say up to speed, I really don't mean up to speed, because that $115 million will still be an old airport underneath it, and you will not have jet bridges. Does not include jet bridges. All modern airports have jet bridges, and that $115 million does not include jet bridge. A jet bridge costs about $1 million each, right? So it doesn't include jet bridges. And so, you know, if you are not wheelchair friendly, and no matter what you put there, it's still vulnerable to hurricanes. If you repair the current building, people will have to travel through a construction site for 3.5 years. And my friends, that will include the time that we're having the America's Cup here. But that won't happen if a new terminal is built some distance away, which is the plan that we have. If you have this building, it still won't take us into the 21st century, and it's a classic case of economics where that $115 million will be throwing good money after bad. That's why we are not going to fix this old building. Just a little economics. As we all know, Bermuda has what I call, in economics terms, gone through the valley of the shadow of death. Long recession. In truth, a recession that long is a depression by any other word. It's a depression. First in the history of Bermuda. And most Bermudians don't know what to do because none of us have experienced this before. And that's when you had so much despair when we became government. There was so much despair in Bermuda. But we can look at other places and see what they did when they had a depression. Let's look at what that happened in the Great Depression in the 30s. Well, in the US, the government invested in infrastructure projects, large infrastructure projects to create jobs, put money in people's pockets, and they'll spend that money in the economy and lift the economy. And they built some pretty iconic places. Well, looky there. LaGuardia Airport was built. Triborough Bridge, Hoover Dam, Golden Gate Bridge, Oakland Bay Bridge. All of those things were built during the Depression to help stimulate the economy. Well, can Bermuda do the same thing to stimulate the economy and create jobs? The answer is no, we can't, because we are already up to our eyeballs in debt. We're not the U.S. We can't do the things that the U.S. did. So we've got to find another solution. We just simply can't borrow millions of dollars to build a new airport. So the only real alternative is a public-private partnership, or P3. With a P3, we can stimulate the economy, create hundreds of jobs for Bermudians without increasing the public debt. This is the alternative that we have chosen as a government because we can do this without harming the economy, without harming government finances. We can have that stimulative effect. We can put our Bermudians back to work and at the same time don't bankrupt the government. Well, as I've said, we can create jobs, construction jobs. I'll show you the actual structure in a minute, but most of the work will be done by local subcontractors. Companies that we're all familiar with here in Bermuda. And they'll require local labor. There'd be hundreds of construction jobs. I don't know, 300 or so. The airport itself will be run by some people who are very experienced in running airports, and they will be able to help train our people. Although I have to say we have some excellent people down there at the airport right now, management people, excellent management people, and they have been extremely helpful in helping to move this project forward. Also training labor. We don't have the labor minister here, but we still have a skills deficit in Bermuda, and this will help us with that skills deficit. And once the airport is built, there will be an enhanced facility for retail operations in Bermuda. Now, I don't want to oversell this because Bermuda is not a hub airport. Used to be when I was a kid, and some of you remember that. When planes used to come from Europe or from Canada, you just stop in Bermuda, go somewhere. They don't do that anymore, right? But still, you can extract a whole lot of money from people just in the space of half an hour, 45 minutes while they're waiting for a plane. And I know you folks know that, right? You go to other airports and you find somebody's lifted your money while you're at the airport. And we can do that here, and we don't take best advantage of that. So we're anticipating a lot more retail activity. The current facility doesn't really lend itself to that, but it will be a key stream of income for the airport, and it will create a lot of retail jobs down there on an ongoing basis. Now, this is the basic structure. Unlike any project that probably any of you are familiar with, I should just speak for myself. I was not familiar with this at first. But this whole structure is based on a government-to-government agreement between the Bermuda government and the Canadian government. So the Canadian government is represented by Canadian Crown Corporation called the Canadian Commercial Corporation, CCC as they're called. So when we're dealing with CCC, when we're talking about CCC, you should always be mindful that we are really talking about the Canadian government. This whole thing is based on a government-to-government agreement. And so CCC are, in fact, the prime contractor in this deal. And they have appointed the development company, ACON, to be their prime subcontractor. ACON, as many of you know, are Canada's largest infrastructure development company. They have built iconic structures like the CN Tower, the St. Lawrence Seaway, and Terminal 3 of the Toronto Airport, just to name a few. They've built airports all over the world. But they are extremely large and very experienced at this. So ACON are going to form a Bermuda company that we're just calling special purpose company here, to actually perform the work and to actually have the contract, the concession contract. The special purpose company really won't have any money of its own, so it's got to go and get its money. So ACON will have, I think, a majority equity position in the special purpose company, but they will have to go out and raise debt on the international bond markets. And we expect institutional investors internationally to be able to invest in these bonds, and it's these bonds that will finance the construction of our new airport. What is really important about these bonds is that you'll see that the structure of this deal is configured in such a way that it's vital that these bonds obtain an investment grade rating. Is critical, because if they don't, the interest on those bonds will be so high it will make this whole thing uneconomic. So we're going out of our way to make sure that these bonds will have an investment grade rating, and they'll be available to any investor anywhere. So if we have like institutions in Bermuda who might be interested in investing some of these bonds or whatever. I guess when it comes down to it, we'll be starting to flog these bonds to all and sundry. But these bonds will be the source of finance of this project. So at the end, there's a concession agreement, and the concession agreement is between this company here and the Bermuda government. And the concession agreement basically provides for the special purpose company to manage the facility for 30 years. Now, you've heard all kinds of disinformation on this, I'm sure, but they will not own the property. They will not own the facility. The Bermuda government will continue to own its own airport. It will continue to own all the assets in the airport. This is just a management agreement. And I'll talk about some of the financial aspects of that in a little while. But that is the basic structure. Government-to-government agreement, subcontractors, institutional investors. So that's my second question. Remember my second question? How come we didn't put it out to tender? Now, since the contract is based on a government-to-government agreement, there really cannot be any tendering. Basically, you can't tender government agreements. That's the first thing. Cannot tender government agreements. And this is an agreement between two governments. There are a lot of really significant advantages that come out of this, though. I know this, again, people got this tender thing stuck in their brains in Bermuda, because that's the normal way we do things here. But just reflect back. I mean, you can go back to the time when the departure lounge that we have at the airport was built under the UBP government. I can't remember what the overrun was there, but it was millions. Millions. And let's talk about the last government. When we had the Barclay Institute, there was a tender process, right? It was tendered for $60 million, ended up costing the government $120 million. Heritage Wharf was originally supposed to be $35 million. By the time we got in power to make it right, because it was built wrong, it cost the governor of Bermuda and you and me $80 million. That was tendered. Lewis Brown Evans building was supposed to be, I think, 50 million. Is that right, Pat? 73 came in 96. So, you know, we haven't had a very good track record with these tender projects, right? And I was very aware of that going into this. So I was looking for something that could really reduce this risk, and we got that here. What we have is a guarantee of CCC, which means it's a guarantee of the government of Canada. They've already done over 200 of these P3 projects. But we have a guarantee of the Canadian government that this project will be delivered on time, on budget, and according to specifications. This just removes a huge risk for Bermuda, takes it right off the table. Because we know from our experience that this has been a real problem for us. If you look at the overruns that we've had in projects for the last, say, 25, 30 years, it totals hundreds of millions of dollars. And because we already, you know, owe $2.3 billion, we can't afford that. We can't afford that risk. This model takes care of that risk, takes the risk right off the table. And because that risk has been taken off the table, it allows us to get cheaper finance. Because the financiers say, well, you know, there's a risk of this overrun, and so, you know, we're going to charge you more interest. With that execution risk off the table, it allows us to get finance cheaper. We could never get this thing done this cheaply on its own without the Bermuda government being on the line itself. Remember, this project is going to be built without the Bermuda government owing any more debt. You know, you hear people tell you that I said that this thing is going to be for free. Well, you know that's not true, right? I don't know how many times I've said in Parliament, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Neither is there such thing as a free airport. An airport's a lot bigger than a lunch. So it eliminates the huge risks. So the project's in phases. Phase 1, exploration, scoping, data collection, we've already done that. That's done and dusted. We are now in phase 2, which is the most important phase. All of the details are now being negotiated and figured out. And I think we are getting close to the end of this phase 2. But phase 2 is the most important. We've got to nail down all of the details. I keep hearing from certain sources that, oh, this is a done deal, this is a done deal. It's not a done deal. It's not a done deal. Parts of it we know. We know who, you know, Aecon. We pretty much know how, but we don't know exactly how because we haven't seen the plans of the building yet. So we kind of know in a general sense how, but we don't know exactly how. And of course, because we don't know exactly how, we sure as heck don't know how much. So until we know exactly what it is, how it's going to be built, how much exact plan is going to be, you know, how many bricks and mortar are going to go into the thing, we cannot know how much until we know that exact thing. We're hoping to have that nailed down in a few weeks. But the deal cannot be done, a done deal, until we know how much. And once we know how much, we've got to figure out how we're going to actually finance it. Can it be financed? So we're a long way from a done deal. So phase 3 is obviously the construction phase, and phase 4 is to occupy and operate the new terminal. What will the new terminal cost? Well, because we don't know exactly how much, this number here is an approximate number. Dare I use that word, a fuzzy number? It's a fuzzy number. Any estimate is a fuzzy number, and that's a fuzzy number. We have to have that, we have to have the lines clearly demarked to change a fuzzy number into a hard number. We're not quite there yet. When the PLP planned to build this airport. The PLP spent a lot of money planning to build a new airport, and they didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell anybody about it. I can tell you how I found out about it when we were in the opposition. I can tell you how I found out. I went to a place, somebody that you guys all know, to buy some glass. And the proprietor says, "Hey, Richards, come around the back. I want to show you something." I went around the back, and he had blueprints of this incredible facility. I said, "What is this?" He said, "This is our new airport. They've asked me to bid on the glass." That's how I found out we were building a new airport. And these people say that we're not transparent? It's ridiculous, right? Anyway, their thing was, as you know who the tourism minister was in those days. And, so whatever he was going to do, it was going to be the Taj Mahal. So you can see there's a Taj Mahal price there. That was how much it was going to cost, $514 million, over $500 million. That's what their airport was going to cost. We have got a revised design that's going to lower our cost a lot, by half. But we're still going to get a very good airport, I can tell you. So the construction is going to take about 40 months, and it's still going to adhere to the marching orders that I gave ACON that, we Bermudians like to think that we're first tier, first class, and first world. And our airport is going to have to manifest that vision. So it's important to know that, 249 is a fuzzy number, and it will become unfuzzy and hard, and we know all of the details that are required for this project. The exact design, the budget, construction timelines. Only then will we know exactly what we're dealing with, and then we will be able to move from phase 2 to phase 3. This airport will be regulated, folks. Even though ACON will have a concession, they will not be a law unto themselves. We are going to form a Quango, what we're just calling right now an airport Quango, that will be the regulator of the airport. And that Quango will supervise the concessionaire's performance as well as approve any fee increases that they may want, and to make sure that they live up to the contract that they signed. And some of the staff, incidentally, insofar as the staff are concerned, all of the staff that work at the airport are going to retain their jobs at the airport. I think some of them are going to go to the airport Quango. Some of them are actually going to stay with the airport itself. And we have assured them that their jobs are secure. Matter of fact, I think what I've been told by ACON that there will actually be more jobs going forward because unlike the current airport, under this concession agreement, these guys are going to be promoting our airport to airlines. They're going to be promoting our airport, which can be a really good thing for Bermuda. We get more airlift, and get more people coming and staying in our hotels, et cetera. It's all good stuff. But the staff will be, some will go to the Quango, some will stay to the airport. How will the project be financed? Ultimately, this terminal will be paid for by users, including you and me here in this room, all the rest of us in Bermuda who fly. The only Bermudians who will not pay for this airport are people who are chained to the rock. Because if you travel, you're going to pay for this airport. It'll be in your ticket. You won't see it, but it'll be in your ticket. And also the airlines, all the users of the airport, not just us, but the airlines, they pay landing fees and all these other various sundry fees that they pay. You use the airport. That's the source of repayment of the debt. And, when I talk to some folks, they don't get this. But, everybody's been to the States. You drive into Manhattan, you either take the Midtown Tunnel or the Triborough Bridge, and what do? You got to pay a toll, right? And that toll is to pay for that tunnel or that bridge or the maintenance thereof. I think those things are so old. I think the capital costs are long paid for, but you're paying for the maintenance. But it's the same concept, except that it's kind of like invisible because it is in your ticket. But I'm sure you all, if you've ever bought a ticket online, they'll tell you what the price of the ticket is, and then just before you do the final click to do the deal, all of a sudden a couple of $100 comes on this thing. That's where they get you, right? So that we'll be there on that, right? So that's how we're going to pay for this thing. The debt that I talked about of this project will not, repeat, not be debt of the Bermuda government. Will not be debt of the Bermuda government. The cash flows that will support that debt will be cash flows of the airport itself. The debt will not depend on the balance sheet, of the Bermuda government or the general revenues. And that's important because if it did, I can guarantee you that our rating agencies, our friends at the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, will take a very dim view of that. And I'm pretty sure that if the Bermuda government was on the hook for this airport, another $250-odd million, the government of Bermuda debt would get downgraded at least 2 points. And that would mean another 1 to 1.5% on how much we have to pay for debt going forward. So it will cost Bermuda a lot of money if it did come on our balance sheet. And quite frankly, the reason that I started down the road on this project was the attraction of being able to do this completely off balance sheet. Because we can't afford to have any more big shots of debt on our balance sheet. I mean, we're running up debt just to run the government. So I said that. And we're working along with our friends at Standard & Poor's and Moody's. They know about this. We've discussed it. They've been into the Ministry of Finance. So when you hear people talk about, oh, you know, this is going to bankrupt Bermuda and all that sort of stuff, I just want to tell you, S&P and Moody's don't think so. You know, S&P alone rates over $47 trillion worth of debt. I think they know what they're doing, right? And they don't think we're going to go broke doing this thing. We're working with them. S&P and Moody's are rating the project's debt as well as rating the Bermuda government's debt. And it's the same company with different people, but they talk, and they talk to us. So everybody's in a loop here with this. No secrets. And they're on board with this. Because they know that they're familiar with these. The only people who aren't familiar with this, guys, is us Bermudians. We're not familiar with this. But I can tell you, the financial world, particularly the project finance world, is very familiar with this. So I want to say a couple other things. The debt won't form part of Bermuda's national debt. For the first 15 years or so, this debt is going to have to be repaid. I'm not sure if they're going to go longer than 15 years, but they're going to have to pay back this debt in 15 years. And most of the money that the special purpose company gets is going to go basically to pay off the mortgage. You know, once the mortgage gets paid, then they're going to have more cash flow. But the agreement that we have with these guys is that once they start making some serious money, they're going to have to share it with the Bermuda government. So that's this line I'm talking about here. Once the debt is paid, the Bermuda government will have a profit-sharing agreement with that company. So, you know, we're not inviting these guys down here to make bonanzas. We're not. We're really looking out for the Bermuda people's interests here. Okay. I've talked about that. So that's my third question. Remember the third question? Because you've heard this. I know you've all heard it. You know, we're giving away millions to ACON. the first place, well, you know, I see my son here. I'll use him as an example, a really bad example, but I'll use him as an example. If I was to buy a car from him, right, for, say, $40,000, you know, and I give him the $40,000, am I giving him money? No, it's a transaction. I'm not giving him anything because I'm getting a car. So when you hear people say they're giving away money, it's just nonsense. We're not giving away anything. We are buying something. This thing isn't free. We're buying something here. And it's a really expensive item we're buying. So are we giving away money to ACON? Well, you hear all this stuff about, well, you know, the revenues of the government being basically diverted to the ACON subsidiary in Bermuda. And then they take that, you know, I tell people all the time, being able to do arithmetic doesn't mean that you know anything about finance. Finance and arithmetic aren't the same thing. You have to do arithmetic to know about finance, but if you know arithmetic, you can still not know about finance. And that's what we have in Bermuda. A lot of people who can do arithmetic, right, and then think that what they're doing makes sense. It doesn't. But what we have here, as I say, the revenues connected to the airport are going to be transferred from government to this subsidiary. But revenues are not profit. Out of that revenue, the ACON subsidiary is going to have to pay for operations. In other words, they have to pay for the salaries, day-to-day operations. They have to pay for that. And that's a big thing because I can tell you right now, there's not much money left over from operations right now, and we haven't even built the airport yet. Now, you know, most of the money that we get from the airport supports operations. But in addition to operations, they're going to have to pay the interest and the capital repayment. In other words, they're going to have to repay the mortgage. Okay? That's going to be huge. Imagine what your mortgage would be on a $250 million house. And then they have to pay for maintenance. And then they have to have some money for reserve. It's only after that that they are even looking at having some sort of profit. And like I said, in the first 15 years, there's not going to be much left after all these things. So, let's say that their profits will be limited until the construction debt is fully repaid. After that, you'll have a much bigger bottom line, but there will be a profit-sharing arrangement with your government to make sure that you know, there is no real sort of profiteering going on here. They deserve a rate of return on their investment? Yes. But they have to share it with the people of Bermuda. It's our asset after all. Okay, what are Bermuda's commitments? This is a very busy page, I warn you. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it unless there's somebody really has a great interest. But there are 3 or 4 things that we are committed to. The first thing is regulated revenue guarantee. Now, what this means, that it's not the same thing as a guarantee by the government, but it is a sort of a kind of standby guarantee of a particular amount of traffic going through the airport. And this is a subject of negotiation as we speak between ourselves and ACON. That we have to have a floor for traffic through the airport. In other words, if the traffic falls beneath that floor, then the Bermuda government's going to have to put some money into a special account. We're not going to give it to ACON, put it in an escrow account, and it stays there, earns interest, and it's be only there in case the special purpose company fails and goes belly up and can't pay the debt. So that's what that money is there for. If they don't fail, the money stays there, and at the end of the concession, we get the money back and the interest. So that's what that is. But it's based on, of course, our projections of what the traffic is. And that's, of all the things that we have to estimate, that is the most important and the most difficult thing. Imagine having to estimate what traffic is going to be for the next 30 years. retain services. The Bermuda government is going to retain certain services: air traffic control, weather service, fire and rescue, and ground electronics. In other words, that's not going to be part of the concession. It's still going to be part of government. Electricity subsidy. We're going to subsidize the electricity at the terminal, but to offset this, the plan is to build a photovoltaic solar facility on the finger that I showed you earlier on the map, a solar farm basically, and that solar farm will generate a whole lot of power. A little bit of it is just required for the new terminal. The new terminal is going to be a lot more energy efficient than what we've got. So ultimately, no money is going to come out of the Bermuda government's pocket. That facility will be built by the time the airport is built. It's actually going out to RFP pretty soon. Airport improvement fee is something we've already taken through Parliament. And those of you who are traveling, you're already paying that. What are ACON and CC's commitment to Bermuda? Well, they're committed to build a new terminal. And we're going to have a guarantee for to be delivered on time, on spec, and on budget, according to our specifications. And also, the airport is going to be an airport service level C. Before you get excited about IATA service level C, let me give you some examples of airports that operate at service level C. Terminal 5 in Heathrow is service level C. The new Hong Kong airport is service level C. The new terminal in Toronto at Pearson International is service level C. There's a new airport in Antigua that is service level C. So service level C is a top level. Service levels A and B can only be found in the Middle East. So that is the formal presentation.